I am going out into the middle of nowhere to turn 5 acres of desert into a permaculture oasis. Please join me on my journey.
Hey there, trusty listener. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's super easy. And I used it to make a podcast with no experience, and I didn't even study anything. I just launched right in. So I'll explain how it works to see if it would help you. So there's tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast. You can do it right on your phone, which is what I do, or you can use a laptop, of course, or a desktop computer. And then when hosting on Anchor, it's super easy to distribute your podcast. You just click a few times and you can get it distributed to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and a lot of other different platforms. It's pretty much everything you need to make a podcast all in one place, and it's totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So I'm going to see if this works. I'm going to see if this works to record segments that I then later put together. I don't think it's going to work, but I just had a really weird experience related to the Q drop that I talked about in my bonus episode recently, where I had a psychic dream that I realized was psychic when the Q drops came through, and it was psychic twice. 2 separate occasions based on the way that the drops came to me over time instead of when they came out. And I just decided randomly tonight to watch Blade Runner 2049 for the first time. And in it, they deal with DNA. There's a DNA sample. It's a bioengineered human. And Q was warning us to protect our DNA. Well, what is the, injection they're calling a vaccine? It's a mRNA gene-altering injection. And so they're bioengineered humans in this movie. They use a DNA sample to confirm the identity of the bioengineered human, the replicant, and then the guy on staff in the place where the new Blade Runner goes in to submit the DNA sample, yada, 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 literally uses the phrase 10 days of darkness. And I'm like, okay, what? That is a phrase that was used quite often related to the Q drops, and I'm kind of like, okay, what's going on?
I'm feeling invigorated because I'm doing video production right now, and looking at the old footage is just exciting to see the changes and to see the progress. And I'm putting together some educational materials as well for students, and one of the things I wanted to do was include a resources section where each of the course modules will have videos and PDF downloads and worksheets and all this stuff. And so what I wanted to try to do is recycle or repurpose some of the footage that I've already taken. And so that's kind of lit a fire under my butt to get the episodes for season 2 of the vlog up on YouTube. So it's been really creatively fulfilling and satisfying to get this nagging to-do item off of my list slowly but surely. But one thing that I noticed was that I still had not taken the time, after decades of being a designer, to actually get a really quality video made of how to do a swale. And I finally went and did it just now on the fly. I tromped out there with no socks, just put some boots on, kind of lugged all the stuff all at one time, had my shovel and my concrete scree tool and my tripod. Just went out there, broke a nail, and shot, and dug and shot this swale, so that people can understand, how do you actually make one? What are they supposed to look like? How deep are they? What are they, how wide are they? What do you mean when you say that? Because I've noticed over the years, many people have been confused about what a swale is and how it's supposed to look. And in particular, I found that installation contractors, landscape contractors, they have no idea. I've been on jobs that I've designed, and I'm serving as the construction manager on the project as well. And I go to check the site as part of the inspections, and the installation contractor has dug a trench, a 1 foot wide trench, and he's just ignored what the plan says, and he just has no idea. And I'm not trying to get on these people's case. I'm just saying that, like, you know, if it's not done properly, it's not going to work. A swale to function needs to be dug to the proper dimensions and the proper shaping and everything like that. And I've witnessed this on my own land, looking at, I think I've shown you some footage already, and I've talked a little bit about half-assed swales where I'm going in, either during a rainstorm and looking at where the water's going and getting in there and just shoveling big chunks of it out of the mud, while I'm standing in water. And then there's other times I'll just go out there and quickly, rough out some swales, fully intending to come in there later and make them proper. But, time passes and everything else I'm doing gets, it's happening. It's getting my attention. And they just sit there looking like super half-assed for a long time. So it was like, wow, I don't really have anything that I can show people. I mean, I can show you a finished swale that looks really beautiful, but then how did I get there, So I just went out there and shot, I think, the best footage I've ever seen of a swale, because I've looked for footage as well to show people, and over the years a few times, and I didn't find anything. So that's just really satisfying to get that done. And I'm going to include that as a resource for my students so that they can really understand, like, what the heck is it that we're building here? And this was a pit swale, but you can make these as long as you want. And then if you want to do a pool, you can also, like a pool swale. I call it a swale pool for lack of a better idea of what to call it. But that just means that you go past the minimum 18-inch width. And that's really all it is. But for some reason, it just mystifies a lot of people who've never heard of permaculture and who have no idea how water infiltration works. And even people that are really into permaculture, I've seen those, several types in that camp completely not getting it either. Like, I was part of a group actually that was called, it had bioswales in the name. And for I think a couple years. And I didn't want to step on the toes of the woman leading it because, she had great intentions, and I was so excited that she was so motivated and making it happen and starting a group and, using her connections. And, so I just didn't really push it. But I did mention it one time where we did one of our site visits to a local park. And the exercise she'd come up with was to talk about where we would place swales. And the goal was to get this into a report that I helped write to send to the city to try to get them to include swales in their parks. And anyway, when we went and kind of at the end of the exercise and we showed each other what we had, everybody else in the group had placed their swales literally at the bottom of the slope, at the bottom of the watershed. And I was kind of like, I have to think about how to tactfully say something about this because it's a big deal. Like, that's the opposite of what you want. You want it to be at the top and then along down. So you want to be infiltrating water at the top of the watershed and soaking it into the ground down below that. So what they were doing was really just hydrating the very bottom, which is kind of funny and ironic because that's what I've started with on my property. And I've talked about this a lot in this podcast, where I'm working on the road berm for now because that's, the main goal to start out was just, stop the water from leaving the property if possible. And then, of course, the whole system will be built up, but it's just me and a shovel, like I've said before, so it's going to take me quite a while to get it done. But I'm also working on a million other things and, tend to have a lazy streak sometimes because I work so hard. I don't want to do certain things sometimes. So, but really the proper way to do swales is you want to start at the top and go down. And you can definitely have swales at the bottom, but if that's the only swale you've got, it's in the wrong spot. If that's the only one you're planning. So anyway, that was a nerd fest and a half, but that's something that really is one of the three big fulcrum things I usually teach my clients, is the swale, because it has such a huge impact. So, and I was even just digging into the half-assed swale to build the nice swale, the proper swale. So even the half-assed swale, the soil was hydrated. It's been weeks since we had some kind of light rain, and I think it was quite a while between that and the previous real rain, and it's hydrated. So it's pretty exciting what depressions in the ground can do. And I was just rewatching this African farmer who's one of my big inspirations, because he's like not this highfalutin, look at me, pay me a lot of money because I'm a big name, which is fine, whatever. I'm not dogging on, Bill Mollison and Jeff Lawton at all. I love them for what they do and did, and it's all good. But there's just something I really resonated on a heart level with this African farmer. He was just a humble farmer, and he was dealing with completely arid, desertified land, and everybody laughed at him. All his friends and everybody, they were just like, you're crazy. You can't do that. And he took something worse than what I started with here, and he transformed the whole thing, and everybody was like, oh my God. And then they all joined him and started helping harvest, because he had so much food being harvested off the property. And so he's one of my big inspirations, because he's doing simple things like what I'm doing. So I don't think it needs to be super fancy and technical necessarily to get things to really work. And I'm kind of in the boat of the African farmer as well, because I'm just this one person, and I'll post something very occasionally on social media, and some local will inevitably be like, you can't do that, and start laughing and pointing the finger and making fun, instead of being even just curious, let alone supportive, but just curious and open-minded. So it seems like a lot of people just don't think that it can work, and it absolutely can. And I've seen it, and I'm seeing it right now. So I'm really excited that at some point when I get it all done, it's going to really show, and people are going to go, oh my God, we doubted you, and we shouldn't have doubted you. This works here. Can you show us how to do it? And that's ultimately what I hope comes out of this project. So
I started writing a book in 2009. I knew I was really onto something, but when I started doing research to see if anybody else was talking about what I was writing about, it scared me so much what I found. I stopped writing for 3 years. A lot's happened since I started writing this book. A lot of things had fallen in my way, as if some force were trying to stop me. Maybe you're familiar with this. If you're trying to do something creative in these times, but this was something different, something dark. I think that it is vital for me to share this journey into the darkness and to lead you there with me. I want you to see what I found, but more importantly, I want to show you the solution. I believe that every person needs to understand how thick their mulch be when the hordes descend. I really think that this is a call that I've been drawn to in my lifetime. This is basically a tell-all book. It's going to show you how to survive what's happening. People are going through horrible things lately, and a lot of us are awake. But I haven't seen one reference yet to the very bottom of the rabbit hole. I've only seen reference to the layers just above it. This book exposes what's at the very bottom. In order to survive, we need to confront that very darkest thing. I hope you'll support my project by pre-ordering a copy. It is in its final edit now and will be published soon. Thank you for tuning in and supporting my work. I hope you'll read Zombie Permaculture.
I don't know what's going on, but I just happened to get done with all these calls and all the stuff I was doing. Kind of dawning realization that the dog had been on her solo ramble in the desert for kind of a long time at that point. I was starting to worry about her, but I couldn't pull myself away from the meetings and stuff that I was doing. And so I finally get done with all that. I go out and start walking down my road with the leash, calling and whatever. And it just at that perfect moment, I see her run across the road, and there's this car emerging from this big B&B down the road. And it's like, how did I get out there exactly at the right time to be able to see that? And then this car starts driving down towards me, and she's running after the car. I mean, I don't even, it's like, I'm kind of just like, my brain is, it's like, how, I don't understand how that worked out, but it was like perfect timing. I ended up working all day pretty much inside, other than spreading a bunch of, I think they call it flake. It's like animal bedding, and it's so weird because it smells just like a hamster cage. It's kind of a gross smell. It's weird too because it's like fresh, but I guess that's what that smells like. They're like cedar shavings. Like, aren't they supposed to smell like cedar? But they smell like a hamster, so makes no sense. But that's what it smelled like. I emptied 2 of those big, huge. I think they're 2 cubic feet. They seem like they're bigger than that, but they're quite large, but very lightweight. And I spread 2 of them out over the dirt, the kind of like compacted, barren area immediately to the east of my shelter, and to this on the southeast corner there, where it gets the beat with the most sun, because there's plants coming up there, because of the things I've been doing. And I figured, the little bit of straw that I've put there half-assedly has been kind of blowing this way and that, but it sort of stays, but it like gets moved around a little bit, but it doesn't like blow away, even if we have quite strong winds out here sometimes. So I decided to kind of like fill in all the gaps and then put some little sticks over some of it and water it down. And I think it'll probably stay much better now. So just kind of like little things that could be done, getting that done, It's not that it's hard, it's just that it takes a little bit of time. And I've been trying to spend more time with the animals, less structured, sort of like always working, staring into a screen like I'm dead. Because the cat and the dog must just be like, what is wrong with mom? I think something's wrong with her. She's just been staring off into space for like years. So I've been trying to kind of spend more unstructured time with both of them. And this morning was like really nice. I actually spent some time off on a Sunday where I went outside barefoot with coffee and like mobile battery charger for my phone, and put the cat on a little cat leash and just sat out there and enjoyed myself. And the cat was totally digging it, kept going and getting on the lap and then getting down, and he wasn't complaining at all being on a leash, which kind of blows my mind. And this was also while Doggo was, had run off, as I said. And so it was like, I think from what I've understood from animal communicators, they have said that animals of all species are continually speaking to each other telepathically. So I've noticed for sure that when Doggo is on a ramble, when I like take her off her leash and just let her run off for hours on her own to get exercise and all that, be a dog, the cat will come out pretty quickly and show this like, it's like, there's no dog in the vicinity. And it made me wonder the other day when the cat did it, like, I wonder what the dog is sort of saying to the cat, like, I'm gonna eat you. Or like, play with me, I want to pounce on you. I don't know, but I wish I had the time, I had taken the time, let's put it that way, to learn animal communication, because supposedly it can be learned. So if you've never heard of that before and you want to learn more about it, which I highly recommend because it's amazing, you can just, do a search for animal communicator. That's the official term of what these people are, what they do, what they call themselves. And I recommend Anna Breitenbach. I believe it's spelled Breytenbach, because she has some really neat accounts that'll kind of like blow your mind and turn you, like it'll convert you immediately, like especially her black, I think it's a black leopard one. I've probably mentioned this before, but she said that it's teachable, it's learnable, you can figure out how to do it. And since I already have experienced quite a number of telepathic and clairaudient, like episodes or communications is how I would put it, I know that I probably could pick it up, but again, it's just one of those things, being really busy, and man, I just really don't need another project right now. But back to hanging out in the RV and having unstructured time. I had a moment where I was like, man, this is awesome. Sitting there with the screen door, and the door actually opened because it was warm enough, if you can believe that. It was warm enough to open the door. And just sitting in there on a laptop with full power, full internet access in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. That was kind of a neat feeling. It was like, I like this, being all connected, but being so off grid. It's a neat feeling sometimes. Every once in a while, I'm like, wow, what a cool thing. Because I didn't plan originally, I wasn't like, I'm going to go off grid, even though it's a really good idea to go off grid for obvious reasons. And if you haven't, if you don't know why that's obvious, I would say the reason to go off grid would be so that you're not dependent on those who have seized power of the grid, pardon the pun, because their whole goal is to get complete control over you, me, and everyone else. And then to the point where if you don't do what they want, it's like the CCP, essentially. Where they just recently burned alive a bunch of people that they were, they had them on lockdown still. Even though all the evidence shows that there never was a pandemic in the first place, literally. And that lockdowns didn't do anything to stem any kind of, problem. But they were actually really bad, of course. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about, or I'm talking about. I know there's a lot of people talking about it, actually. I'm not the only one at all. But so it's interesting that was how it ended up for me, was that I ended up going off grid, and it's been really cool. It's been really rough too. In season 2 of my vlog, which is just a video version of this podcast, so you can go watch videos of everything that I'm doing on the land at my YouTube channel. And let's see, so essentially going off grid, I sort of had a really bad experience at first because the contractor that I had was the worst. He showed up whenever. He half did things. He strung me along for months. He overcharged me. It was a mess. Like, my pump was leaking. I think in episode 2 of this season of the vlog, I show images of the pump and how it was leaking. You don't want that in a desert situation where water is at a premium. And plus it was like using power, so it's like leaking power and water off grid. But yeah, so at first it was like horrible, and my power had gone out over 100 times, which I documented very carefully, so as to hopefully hold him accountable at some point. I was very nice, very accommodating. I was pretty much a super, super nice bend over backwards till my back breaks doormat in a way, until I finally couldn't take it anymore, and I talked to an attorney, and we just sent him a letter asking for his accounting and saying that at this point we wanted to pause and we wanted to know what he was saying he was spending on what. And he totally never even replied. And I've seen him a few times around at events, and he'll just like it's like he's got this really scary kind of energy, and he'll start walking towards you, and I'm just like, nope. And I'll like, go talk to someone else. And he's too chicken shit to really come and actually address it, because he knows that he was like, fucking me over, cheating me basically and not doing a good job. And he's this guy who I've heard from multiple other people that he has totally screwed over and given broken systems to. And so it's like, I don't even know why he's still out here, and I don't understand why he's still in business. So anyway, suffice it to say, at first being off grid was really hard, and my power was going out up to 7 times a day. Usually it was once or twice a day, but it was like almost every day for a long time. And then I had a new contractor finally come in. He adjusted my BMS settings, did an inspection, made a big list of everything that the first contractor didn't do correctly, got shocked twice because one of the things the first guy didn't do right was ground the system. And I haven't lost power once since then. I mean, I don't use a ton of power. I use a couple lights in the evenings. I use internet, laptop, charging devices. I have my water pump that I use not every day. In the summer, in the heat of the summer, I had, but as I get my irrigation systems kind of, getting them up and running and in place and developed, that'll probably change. I'm sure it will. But I'm not like running a generator all the time or anything like that. So, or whatever else would take a lot of power. I don't know. But so it's been pretty great since then. So if you're considering going off grid, I'll probably do more specific stuff about being off grid in the future, because there's something super neat about it. And I think to me, for me, I'm still at a point in my project of coming out here and regenerating this property where I've still got a lot going on. I've got a lot on my plate. I still haven't really landed in certain ways because there's so much to do. So the way I work, I don't know if you're like this, but if I don't have certain things kind of, I guess, squared away or cleared off my desk, as it were, then I have a hard time coming up with the bandwidth to handle true full processing of other things, if that makes sense. It's like I usually will say I don't have the bandwidth for that right now, because it's just I can only process so much at a time. And I'm one of those people, I can process a lot. I'm a polymath, plus I'm a girl. I know girls can multitask better than guys, supposedly. This is what I've read, but it can be a little overwhelming. I'm gonna turn around because there's two trucks up there at the top of the road, and they're making truck noises, and I don't want to get up there and whatever. That reminds me, I ran into somebody I know, like I'm familiar with. I know who they are. Chit-chatted with them once or twice. But the other day, and I was recording something, and this guy, he just looked at me so quizzically. He's like, you just never see people out here walking around. And I was like, people don't walk here? Like, okay. But I think he also was just kind of confused. He was like, are you looking for a signal? And I'm like, no. But he just it was like he didn't understand what he was seeing. It was like he was trying to, but it didn't make sense. So I don't know. Those Californians, man, they're just fucking all the same, and they're all crazy. So, but yeah. So being off grid is sometimes it just hits you, and you're like, wow, I can't believe this. This is a miracle. It's amazing technology. Whoa, would you stop? Come here. She's so bad. Sometimes my dog is really good, and other times she's just horrible. So I'm trying to work on her in a daily basis now and do some basic training with her, but she still hasn't grasped the bigger concepts, like, letting her ramble. She doesn't stick around the house with me. She runs off and goes and hangs out with other people. It's like, that's such shitty dog behavior. No, come on. So my friend taught me this thing. Hey, come here. And I'm going to do it to her right now, where you bring the collar way up around her, right under her jawline. And then you hold some good amount of tension on it, where if she pulls on it, she chokes herself, kind of. You don't choke her. You just let it be slack to the point where if she pulls out of line, she'll choke herself, kind of. And then it teaches them to, quit it. It makes sense. It's something I would have never thought of. And I didn't really know that when you pull the collar up that high, it does that. So, it's much better. So, yeah, anyway, today I learned some things about editing, and, I will say that ad that I recorded, ambassador ad or whatever, I had never tried to do any of that stuff. I'd looked at the interface briefly and just been like, had too much else I was doing and never bothered. And I know I've mentioned that several times before. So this will be the first time I've ever edited an episode of this podcast. And I haven't edited it really much at all. There was one little portion that I cut out because it was boring. It was like 30 seconds long or 28 seconds long. It's going to be more work, but I want to provide better content at this point. And I'll also be offering a subscription as well going forward with special content for subscribers, with more of the kind of content that the most people have listened to. Like, so the episodes that have gotten the most listens, it'll be more of that kind of content. So that's exciting. And if you want to support me, please subscribe. And if that's more than you want to do, you can always just buy me a coffee, and I'll put the link somewhere. That would be helpful too. Any little bit helps. And if that's not something you could do, no worries. I'm glad you're listening. And please share, if you think anybody else would be interested that you know of. I appreciate that too. So I'm getting a little more professional about this podcast. The process is pretty fun. I have learned that I am kind of a nerd when it comes to video production type things, and this is audio, so it's a little different, but it's like basically the same kind of thing, generating content. So, and I'm really excited about the latest episode that we'll be uploading, I think, next Friday to the vlog, the video series that goes along with this podcast. I did a Swale information sheet, and I offer that to students in my course that I'm developing right now. That'll be a free resource, but you can also get that for, I think it's just a few bucks on my website as a download as PDF. It's got specs for how to do it and like where you would put it and all that. Make sure it's oriented the right way. I also did find a very old episode that for some reason, I think just because I was unfamiliar with the technology at the time and hit the wrong button or something. And I thought I had deleted it because it showed up and it was just a blank episode. But I figured out where the recording of that was, and I uploaded that. So that's now available, and that's called Earthworks Work. And so you can find that if that's something you're interested in. And it's in there somewhere, but I believe it's called Earthworks Work. And talking about how I was thinking this stuff would work out here, but I wasn't sure. And I wanted to prove it kind of to myself so that I could like show other people and know that I wasn't just full of hot air. I wanted to really know for sure that, yeah, it will work, because this place is pretty intense where I moved to and bought land. So, and it's funny too, because the locals will be like, you can't do that. They're all naysaying little, like, they're like all like, that's impossible. It's just because they couldn't do it and they don't know how to do it. And so they're like, well, that can't be done. They're just poo-pooing everything and don't even listen, don't even, they're just like, no, that just doesn't work. They're closed-minded to it. And then there's this other segment of the locals where they seem to think that this desert landscape is like indigenous and native, and that you shouldn't change it. And it's like, that's so ignorant. It's not how it's supposed to look at all. It's a totally degraded landscape. It was completely deforested, and then it was grazed by cattle, and then it was grazed by sheep. So the trees were removed. The grasses were completely pulled up by the roots. There's so much erosion. There's no earthworks. I mean, there's not none. There's every so often you'll see this large scale, they call it like a wildlife habitat kind of watering hole kind of thing, where it's basically a big berm and like a U shape that will capture water for wildlife. But other than that, there's nothing. So it's like, that's my struggle with the local people, but I'm not trying to fight against it. I'm just observing it and acknowledging it. And then I'm going to just show instead of tell. I'm just going to show them, yes, you can do it. And here's how. That's the whole point of the project in the first place, is to really show people you can totally do this. I don't care what anybody said about, you can't grow anything out here and you can't yada, 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 yada. I'm bound and determined to show that we can. And that's sort of, this is where the stubborn Taurus comes in. And so, but I think it'll be really fun to see as the project evolves and the trees grow up and things start greening up more and more. I had a surly neighbor who was sort of grouchy for no reason and kind of combative, and I had no idea why. And he would pass me on the road fairly frequently, and I'd be out working. And one day he passed me, and he was just like, "So, when you gonna green? When this is gonna turn all green?" And it was like this weird challenge. Like, I don't remember saying that it was gonna turn all green suddenly. But okay, I mean, give me a few years, because I can't magically make plants grow faster than they grow. But on the same token, or by the same token, I don't know how you say that. There are parts where I've really done the work are absolutely greening up. There's plants everywhere. I was just sitting outside, drinking coffee, like I was saying this morning, and I was enjoying butterflies, honeybees, and hoverflies. Hoverflies are like one of my favorite insects. They have the capabilities of a hummingbird in a helicopter. And they're just super great pollinators. They're really a good sign of ecology. And I'm just sitting there, and there's blooming flowers and, all this wonderful biology happening right just in front of me, right in front of my feet. And all these plants I didn't plant. They're just coming up because I'm creating the conditions to allow them to take root and to spread and to flower, right? So every tiny little bit of effort I can make, I think it's going to have a big impact. And it's just the negative resistance that anytime you take on anything that's worth doing, you're going to face. There's always going to be, it might be your grandfather, there's always going to be somebody or people that are going to be like, you can't do that. Why are you even trying? You're wasting your time. And luckily I'm stubborn, so I'll show them. Not really. Man, I'm walking past the flake, whatever, and it smells like a hamster. That is bizarre. I guess that's, for ages, what humanity has thought was the smell of a hamster was actually the smell of the bedding material. The pines that had looked like they were surviving, and it's really not for sure, but I think 6 of them are alive still, and 4 of them don't look like they're doing so great, and some of them kind of came that way. I think this is most likely, how they came, although it could be the water boxes. These freaking water boxes, man. But I did do a very thorough beginning to end video tutorial as well for my students. And that was really satisfying to go find all that footage and put it together into a cohesive video. So that's all up there for anyone who wants to try this and try using that as a very efficient watering technique. Some things are doing great. So I do think a lot of it is the nursery stock and the trauma of going through the mail. But 6 out of 10 isn't bad. The one thing I'm sad about, though, is that the corner one down on the northeast corner of the property, that's one of the ones that died. And I was like, man, I wanted a pine there. I wanted an anchor tree, But I do have little trees coming up in the greenhouse, and they're probably too small to put out this year, although I still could probably do it. I mean, why not? It's, seeds, like I can always do more. One of them's a Palo Verde, which would be beautiful. So I don't know. I might go do that. But lifting a full water box is not really that fun, and you inevitably get wet, and it's sloshing around. And so, but we're getting still really nice, weather intermittently. I mean, the other day it was cold wind this time of day, and we didn't go for an evening walk. And this time it's totally still, and you don't need to wear gloves or even a hat. It's just nice. So it's kind of like at a certain point I'll have to cut it off and hunker down and call it, for the season. But my heart's like, oh, there's still time. I could totally get more in the ground. So, but I think I'm kind of out of stock. I don't think that the oaks that I didn't put in the ground are alive. They might be. The instructions I got, well, they weren't instructions, but the little insert said, that they are viable, but they just don't look like they made it. There's no sign of life. I did not do the scratch test, which if you don't know what that is, it's a little thumbnail on the bark to see, scratch down on the plant and see if when you pull a tiny bit of the bark off, if it's green underneath. And then if it's green, of course, it's alive. If it's brown, it's dead. I haven't done that yet. But I did get, I think, 5 oaks in the ground. And one of them looked a little dry that I walked by, but it had also looked like it had been disturbed by the javelina that had been coming around. Although it could have been wind too, but I think it was probably javelina. But then some other ones that I walked past, they look fine. They look very good. So it's kind of one of those things. I think planting trees is going to be, there's going to be a percentage that don't make it. And that's sort of just part of it, you know. And also, I think I want to do more content on this eventually, more concentrated content. But and I've spoken about this a little bit before, but there are these sort of like positional, like geometrical positioning, I guess. I've mentioned this before for sure. Yeah, the angles and stuff that can make one plant in one location not be doing so well, and another of the same exact plant planted at the same time with the same same circumstances, same treatments and everything, doing really well. And it's about where it's planted, like the energetic radiance of that spot. So one of the videos I did for my students is showing them, it's like a part of a tutorial on doing the buried clay pots correctly, because I had to try those a few times before I got them to work. And I ended up walking over to the closest tree that I had used them on, and God, I just was marveling at how radiant with life it is, and it's already 18 inches high. So it's just like just vibrantly alive, and all this new growth and the sunlight shining through the leaves and everything. So that was pretty fun to see, and it made me think like some of the other ones I planted at the same time are not as big and are not as vibrant and robust looking. And I thought, well, maybe that position right there just happens to be like a good radiant energy spot, you know? So, because there's one that's in the same line as that one, and it's also doing not quite as good, but like really good. And then as you move further to the north, they sort of, it's like it tapers off kind of. So it's really interesting. I'm very interested in that. And so yeah. So anyway, that's it, I think, for this segment. And I hope you enjoyed this. I'm also going to be adding polls and Q&A and things like that to the podcast at certain episodes and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoy the enriched content.